Why do you coach? Welcome to the Nick Anthony Show. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Nick.
Hey, Nick, how are you today?
I'm good, Anthony.
Good.
Although it's raining. A little known fact about me is that I don't mind a rainy day once in a while. That's a fun fact.
Gotcha.
So, but coming off of the weather we've had, I don't love it today.
Right.
So,
And our audience doesn't, we're probably 2 months ahead of this recording by the time it comes out. So.
That's why I didn't say what the other weather was.
Come on. Oh, but still, it's going to be muddy and messy and all that out there.
Okay. What do you got for me today?
So, Nick, we're going to talk about time today. And
Okay.
so one of the things I wanted to start with is one of the most stressful time-related things I've had in my life. And I got it was one of those points where I got a big promotion. And I
Okay.
totally different job, different pressures, all that kind of stuff. And I was just bombarded from all different sides for all kinds of different time issues, time demands, and these kind of things and everything else. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it was just so scary because, quite frankly, I was in a new job and I was like, I'm going to fail. And it hit me one day. And I don't know, it was for me, right? But it just hit me. It's like, well, shoot, I'm going to get fired anyway. And I'm in a position now that's high enough. I can get fired for any reason, right? I can come in and somebody just says, hey, we don't like, the color of your shirt or whatever, you're out of here. But I just figured like, I'm just going to do the right thing, what I think is right.
Yeah.
Because any of these things that I'm going to have to let fall off the table, not be able to manage, I can be fired for it. So I decided I'm just going to do what I think is right. And if I get fired for doing what I think is right and letting the other things fall off, then I can still look at myself in the mirror. I might not have a job, but I can still look at myself in the mirror. But it makes me think about coaches.
Yeah.
Because if you think about all the things we've talked about so far, and we're only on episode 18, right? There's so many things for coaches to worry about for just one player. From communication to stages of competence to PKE to whatever. There's just so many things that they can't possibly get it all done, even for one player. And then if it's a team sport, it's infinity. So we're talking to coaches that have jobs that are bigger than infinity. And how do they manage that process? What do they do?
Yep.
And that's what I think we're going to try to tackle today.
Yeah. I mean, I know where you're going with that because I was like, God, he's talking about getting fired. We're supposed to have some credibility here, and you're talking about getting fired.
Well,
so no, I agree. I do. We talk about this.
Pro coaches, college coaches, high school coaches.
Correct.
Right. Even some youth thing coaches. Yeah, they have to be worried about getting fired.
Oh yeah. No doubt. I mean, it's funny that you say that because in my job, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, but and maybe this is a fault of mine as an administrator, or it's a strength. I mean, either one. But I really like. I try not to even think that way. And I don't even know how to explain it. But coaches, I don't want coaches to think about that. Like to your point about what are they doing. I mean, doing what you believe in and sticking to it and, being able to look yourself in the mirror, because I feel like those things and I think my portion of our conversation a little bit with time or not enough time will touch on this, but they don't, if they're doing this, they're getting distracted, right? If they're worrying about all these different things, to your point, there's all these different factors or decisions or variables that they have to deal with. And then all of a sudden they've forgotten about the most important stuff. And I think that's where you're going to kind of head into this a little bit and how you manage your time.
Yeah, just for the record, I didn't get fired.
Oh, good. Congratulations. Great.
And I think I did a pretty good job because I
Nice.
got other promotions afterward.
Good.
But that's what it took for me, right? We talk all the time in here. We're not saying this is the way to do things. We talk about this is a way to do things.
Yes.
So the thing that worked for me to get to that point that you just described is I had to say, so what if I get fired, right? I'm going to do the right thing. And then that liberated me, right? And everything, the weight was gone from worrying about that. Okay, I'm just going to do the right
Can
thing.
you describe the right thing?
For
I mean, it's I don't mean to throw you a curveball, but what was,
all right. I'm gonna
was
go
the right thing the main thing?
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. I think that's a phrase now that I don't really know exactly what you mean. But yes, it's the main thing. You focus on the core stuff, right? Like I had to put a rule in place for my team. Here's an example, right? We were getting bombarded from the corporate office for thousands of requests all the time, right? And we were just getting overwhelmed. The whole team, it wasn't just me, the whole team was getting overwhelmed with crazy minutia requests.
Yes.
Right. And so I made a rule. I said, you can't answer corporate. People watching from corporate. Yeah, no, but you can't answer corporate unless you get a request 3 times. And even if you get the request 3 times, you still have to come to me before you go respond to them.
Yes.
Otherwise, go take care of the customers, take care of the employees, take care of shareholder value. I'm a big believer in business. If you're not taking care of customer satisfaction, financial shareholder satisfaction, or employee satisfaction, you're really wasting your time. But so we'd get all these things all the time that didn't address any of those things, right? And some were important, but we didn't know. But sometimes, like if you didn't answer, nobody even followed up to ask you again.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, so I guess that's the main thing. But yes, I believe those 3 things are the main thing in business. And whatever your philosophy is as a sports coach, right? You have to figure out what your main things are too, right? And so yes, the main thing, and that's the first thing about managing time is what are you prioritizing?
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I think that's interesting because we go back to previous episodes, probably
Right.
2 in particular, where we talk about like almost setting priorities, but also, rules is, kind of as just you said, go ahead.
No, it was actually 4. Found number was 2.
No.
Oh,
in
so-
2 particular episodes.
Oh,
is when it was-
I
yeah.
misunderstood.
No, that's
Sorry.
fine.
Yeah.
But I think that really is important because you get bogged down by, but in the end, some things, the decisions that aren't that important really. And if you're not kind of honed in and, aware of your emotional skills and of what is getting put in your brain, then you're gonna get bogged down in things that aren't. I always look at my job as at Drexel, and my role with working with coaches is trying to help them with that. Is like that is not I won't let them be involved in that decision, and it's not maybe sometimes it's been taken that I'm controlling, but the intent of it all is to alleviate their having to make decisions, right? So I think give me a second to give you a little story that I think really explains this, and it wasn't necessarily, it was forced, kind of the limited number of decisions, and that was during COVID, right? And Philadelphia, Drexel's in Philadelphia, was probably the strictest city in terms of testing, in terms of protocols, and Drexel, I would say, on top of that, was extremely strict. So what that meant when we played sports is coaches didn't have a lot of decisions to make. I mean, they could not decide, where am I going to practice, and what's our workout going to be, and can I do this? Can I do that? It was so structured. It was like you basically had to decide which 6 kids are going to be together. So they were all kind of like these new decisions. It wasn't like this total distraction. Like I don't know what we're doing. It was so set in place for them. Right. It was like you're going to practice from 3 to 4 because you don't have any other options, and you're going to practice here because the other teams are going to be there, and you can't be with them. Right. And because of that, they had such limited amounts of decisions to make, and the decisions were so focused. It was so the priority. It wasn't, oh, like I got to talk to this donor and I got to do this and I got to do that. We were trying to, for lack of a better term, and it's not a great term, but we were trying to survive, right? So we were, and just play sports. The goalpost moved to let's just play sports. So it was so process driven,
Right.
And it was process. It was process. What's the next day going to bring? What's the next? And because of that, they were so good. They were so good. Everyone, I will say, our strength and conditioning team became so creative in this because they had this limited thing. They didn't have 100 different machines to use because they had to be outside and they had to be on the field, and they just had bands and body weight. And so their amazing abilities and talents came out because they were restricted in this what I like to use is they had really strict guardrails, and the guardrails allowed that creativity. There's some something out there or some activity that I've seen where it's like if you put 100 different objects on the table and say build a house with those objects, you're gonna be all scatterbrained. I don't know where to start. But if you just put on popsicle sticks, then you know what to do. It's like, well, I'm very limited. I got to figure out, this, but I'm not having to be like, well, this shape is good. This is, and so it's like the creativity and I know there's probably studies and there's different things on why, but I love it because it's like the better guardrails. I don't even want to say the more strict guardrails because I don't know if that's fair, but the better guardrails allow for creativity and better decision making because it's right in front of you, and then you can focus on the main thing or what your priorities are. So it's like putting the rules on to make better decisions. We talked about it when we talked about Halo at Drexel and goal setting, and if you put on the proper plan and the rules, you know where your decisions are going to come from. So
anyway, I was going to ask you. You talk all the time about about coaches basically being CEOs of their teams. So would you recommend then that coaches, without the outside influence of COVID restrictions and that kind of stuff, do the same kind of thing? Would you have them absolutely put like guardrails around everything?
Yes, and I think that's really hard.
Right.
Let's be honest on that. For coaches to put their own guardrails on is very difficult. We had Denise Dillon on from Villanova. I will say she was very good at this. She's very good at knowing what is the most important thing, and a little bit of, and we touched on this before, a little bit of unconsciously competent at it. But being able to know that, that is a decision that I empower the assistants, or I empower this assistant to make day to day. I'm not going to get worried about that, and as someone who was her supervisor at one time, there was times when I was like, early on, I would say that bothered me. Like you're acting like you don't care about it, but it wasn't that she didn't care, especially at certain times of the year when they would kind of divvy up responsibilities or divvy up decision making. It was more that that was going to distract her, and I think the more coaches can identify what those distractions will be or those temptations will be helpful. Right. I mean, it's critical. And so, that relates into time, because if you get bogged down with all these nonsense, I'll give you an example. We get all these emails because we're all available on a website. So you get hundreds of emails from high school kids or, potentially who want to play whatever sport. That's not a head coach's job to get back to all of them. That's just going to distract them. Like there needs to be a process in place, whether it's an automated email, even for the assistants and stuff, but they can't respond, in a unique way to every one of these things. Like they will be, as I've heard it from some others, like they will be majoring in the minors with that stuff. And there are more important things to do if they've established their priorities. And so doing those things, there's not enough time. There's just not enough time. Set processes in place, but head coaches, they can't do it. And I do think like even young coaches think, all right, I got to respond. And we want them to respond in a manner, but we actually want them to set up a process.
Right.
So they're not doing it.
Yeah, I was talking to two actually D1 coaches together a couple of weeks ago, and they were both like, we answer 1 out of 5 emails. So if you're sending us emails as a player, right, they said they tell all the players, don't expect an answer.
Yes.
Just don't expect an answer. We get back to 1 in 5.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but, talking about that, and, one of the most focused times I ever had in my life is when I was training for the English Channel.
Yes.
So this is years, right? But it goes back to what you were saying, those 2 episodes, goal setting and space, where if you get your goal right, a lot of decisions just fall away. So
Yes.
for me, during those years, I had hobbies I stopped doing. I had things I stopped doing, right? All it was for me was 3 things. It was family, work, and training.
Yeah.
And that was it. Right?
It was a barrel of laughs during the English Channel.
No,
God, he would have been so much fun I guess I would have said, I would say you wouldn't be much fun, but you weren't much fun because we wouldn't even have seen you.
Right. I wasn't fun. And that's okay. Especially the way I did workouts. I didn't work out with anybody else or anything. I was alone a lot. But it got rid of a whole bunch of decisions. So I had actually more time, right? Because I wasn't worried about what show I was going to watch. I didn't watch, big sporting events because I was training for my own big sporting event, right? That kind of stuff. So, and it goes back to, one of the greatest time management tools I've learned is from this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that is the urgent and unimportant matrix. And so there's the urgent and the important. And so it's unurgent, unimportant. And we probably need to do a diagram for the people that are watching the show.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get the concept that there's 4 boxes. There's the urgent and unurgent, important and unimportant. And so many people get caught up, and this goes back to your point about people answering every single email. So many people get caught up in the urgent and unimportant. But where the big breakthroughs happen are the unurgent, important categories. Everybody works on you got to take care of the urgent, important, right? But a lot of people just spend a lot of time in the unimportant category. You really, to be effective, I think as a coach, business, career, life, whatever, you've got to spend time in the unurgent, important box. And really, that was part of our challenge with the show. And I think we were pretty disciplined about saying, we want to build this show. We want to go do this. We want to make this happen. But you have a full-time job. I'm doing stuff full-time. We have a lot of stuff going on. We had to carve out time to figure out how to make this show happen.
Yeah,
right?
I give you credit for that.
Well, I don't know if I deserve credit, but you found time too, though, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I bugged you a little bit more to meet, that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, we did that. We followed that in order to be sitting in these chairs having this conversation today. And so I recommend, if it's my place to recommend, sorry, but I really like either read the book, think about the concept, reflect on it, and see if it works for you, right? We talked about goal setting, but even beyond goal setting, it's still easy to get distracted by a ton of stuff.
Yes.
So are you working on the most important things or not? Right? I guess that's the main thing is the main thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's still 2 categories because the main thing can be urgent stuff, but the stuff that has the big breakthroughs are the unurgent, but really important stuff. And you got to know what all my tasks are. Where do these things fit? How do I prioritize? Which one's, going back to my story at the beginning, which one falls off the table? Which one am I not going to get done? Which one am I going to risk getting fired for?
Yeah.
Right? And, in business, I'm going to go back to business again if I can. It's really easy for a salesperson because they have a quota, right? Their quota is boom. And they can miss filing reports sometimes. They can miss other things. And if they're blowing their numbers out sales-wise, they can get away with a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they take care of all the other stuff and they don't hit their main thing, right? And sometimes your quotas are over a year. So it's in January, if it's may not feel urgent.
Yeah.
But it's important, right? But they may not, I'm not saying that very well, but you have to keep in mind the unurgent, important stuff, even as a salesperson, is like, if I really want to get to my number by the end of the year, I need to be doing stuff now in January, February, March. And I'd say, as a coach, whatever sport, you've got to do the same thing all the way through, even preseason. You've got to be thinking about the end goal. What's your end goal at the end of whatever your end is, whatever your big goal is.
We'll be right back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Today's show is brought to you by the free film available on YouTube, A Dream Plus a Plan. Learn what it takes to accomplish your dream, whatever your dream is. Go to www.adreamplusaplan.com. adreamplusaplan.com.
Welcome back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good segue into the coaching thing, because, in my brain, as you were talking, I was thinking, for anyone, I'm very much guilty of this, but it is so hard to not get caught up in the urgent, unimportant.
Right.
Even the urgent important. I mean, where so much you've created so much urgent important by not doing the urgent or not doing the unimportant. Hold on, say that one more time.
By not taking care of the unurgent important.
That's it. There you go.
You end up creating more urgent important.
100%. Yes. And so if you lay out a coach's kind of time frame, and they have this window, hopefully before seasons start or before schools start or whatever, where they really need to be doing that, right? That's the kind of the planning, and how well you do that, right, creates the space in your brain to be able to handle things. I know coaches who almost limit how they even communicate with me, in a sense, as they get through the season. So it's not this. I allow them during the season a little bit of leeway in communication, right? That I trust them enough that if it is urgent and it is important, they will tell me, when it comes to these things. But I believe they need space in their time, in their decision making, to allow to make those decisions. I think when you shrink your, and let's just use the volume of your brain, when you just cloud it and crowd it with so many things, I think you struggle sometimes to make decisions. You want to talk about making urgent decisions, in the middle of a game. Can you, are you in a place where you haven't distracted your brain? And again, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know all the aspects. I think I just just witnessing it in sports and life, is when you have too many things going on, right? Can you make the best decision? And coaches need to free up their time, and I would also time/brain space to be able to make good decisions. I mean, so much about what we're talking about, not enough time, comes down to decisions, right? And planning, right? So that you can have that space to be able to make those decisions. Do you have so many things in your brain, or your assistants putting so many things in your mind, and you're cycling, and then all of a sudden it's a moment in the game that you have to make a decision. Are you prepared to make that decision? Have you had the emotional skills throughout to be able to make that decision? Because guess what? That one is urgent,
right,
and it is important. And if you aren't present in your, in space, then you may not be able to make a good decision there. So I do think somewhat, there is in coaching this, this ability to set priorities to, in my, with using my words, set some guardrails so that you know where it's coming from. I mean, are you organized, and are you set enough that hey, during a game, I just want to talk to that assistant when it comes to the defensive end. That's what I want to do. And if other assistants, let them talk to that assistant, and then when we go to the offensive end and I'm making different things up. And if it's football, it's hey, I want to hear about this guy. Or if it's, organizing those type of systems, communication systems, allows the coach to kind of be all right, I know I'm going to hear from one voice on this.
Yeah.
And it's a lesson for assistants too. I mean, I'm getting a little bit off on a tangent, but it's also a lesson for assistants. Are you putting something in the coach's mind that is just going to hurt them make a decision?
Is it valuable?
Yeah, is it valuable enough?
Right.
Do you see something so much?
Right. Right. And so I actually spent a couple hours with a coach just on Monday this week. club coach, right? So I know pros and colleges challenges are different, right? But he basically had this problem that we're talking about. And he got talking about like he's like always fighting fires, all right? And fires by definition are urgent and important.
Yes.
Sometimes they're brush fires, you don't have to worry about them, but they're urgent and important. But after what we really figured out through the conversation is really his goal for the organization wasn't really set. I mean, this is a club coach, has a couple hundred players, head coach, handful of coaches. I mean, it's right that the goal wasn't set clearly. It wasn't specific and precise, as we talk about in the goal setting episode, right? And he hadn't communicated it, right? And even though, so he had one, but it wasn't tight enough, candidly, and it wasn't shared. And so that we talked about different situations where, like, if people had known what the goal was, would that ever become an issue? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
Right. And so for a club coach, it's different than a pro coach, right? Pro coaches have their constituents, right? But, as a club coach, you do have to take care of the parents because it matters. I think probably less in high school and less, but then college it's less, and then pros it's even less, you would hope, right? But a club coach, that's one of the things. And so he had like parent uprising that's going on, right? Which is important, but it was all happening because of the lack of precise goal setting and precise communication so that everybody was on the same page. So again, we talk about how to find more time. Carving out time, an unurgent, important thing is taking the time to go do goal setting.
Yes.
Right? And that's never an urgent thing, but it's a really important thing, and then it filters down and gets rid of a ton of other decisions.
Yeah, and when you agree, and I think you're just saying that, is carving out time, like literally setting time in your day, in your calendar, where I'm going to spend this hour working on something that I know, or not something, the important, planning job, like just, setting all that stuff so that, when things are urgently important, I actually am able to, because you want to be able to address them in a very present manner rather than when they're kind of scattered. Yeah.
Right. So actually, that's a great point. I keep talking about the bigger, longer term kind of thing, right? And you're right. I should have said that. So thank you. It's just, it's also every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to find time to work on the unurgent, important things every day that you can. I mean, sometimes the fires are just too much. I'm a realist, but you have to fight. And so there's this guy who wrote, and a lot of people, Silicon Valley, Tim Ferriss, this guy named Tim Ferriss, he wrote this book called The 4-Hour Work Week. And he believes that he's a content creator, basically, right? He writes books, he writes stuff, right? And so he's got all these things that he has to worry about because he's on boards, he's running business, he's doing all this kind of stuff. So there's lots of operational stuff to do around the things that he does. But he remembers every day, right? I've got to create content. If I'm not creating content, I'm not creating more value. And so that's his unurgent, right? Because he's got revenue streams. That's his unurgent but really important thing. So he starts every day creating content first. Then he goes and looks at his operational stuff. So he takes the Covey thing and he applies it to every day. And so it's hard to do, right? Especially for coaches, anybody, right? Just coaches, but it's hard to do unless you make it a habit. You have to work to make it a good habit.
Yeah, and I'm impressed with somebody, if we go back to kind of a football thing, football coaches, head football coaches, they kind of, if you watch them during games, I think it's fascinating, right? I mean, there's some of them look like they're almost doing nothing, right? Other than listening, which maybe they are, maybe no. But then they're taking that information in, and because they know they have to make decisions, and it might just be this, we're going for it on fourth. You have, but they have to have the feel for the game, the presence. That's why what I do think is remarkable is someone like Sean McVay, right, who's calling every offensive play, and he's taking the head coaching responsibilities, right? And I don't necessarily know the ins and outs of Sean McVay in terms of, is he a good game day or game management coach or not, but he's able to process enough where, and again, he may have set up systems that allows him where he has somebody he completely trusts for game management. He believes that it's more important for him to call every play on offense rather than necessarily he trusts this person to be able to manage the game for him and with him. So I find that stuff fascinating how coaches do it, but I think a football coach is a great example of how they're managing the game through their systems, right? And because they are kind of almost, they even give the presence of a 30,000 foot level where I need to focus on the most important things, and not just get bogged down on that player's technique on the way they're playing press coverage. And so those type of things, they relate to, right, the bigger picture of running a program, a whole team, but then they also, work into the game management stuff. And the not enough time aspect of all of this is, to me, again, I'll bring it back, so much of it is just planning and decision making.
Right. I would agree. It's the goal setting. It's the goal setting for every day. It's the goal setting for every season, goal setting for the long-term vision for your team, whatever it is, right? It's all that kind of stuff. And actually, I think it ties back to PKE a little bit too, right? We talk about managing your players' PKE, which is physical, knowledge, and emotional, and the E is the emotional management piece here. But it's managing yourself. Like if you can deal with a task without getting emotionally wrapped up in it, you actually get this, you get through it more quickly. And not only that, right, it doesn't take up, to your point about clouding up your brain. When it's done, it's done. Like if you get too worked up about it, even when it's done, it lingers. You worry about it later, and you think about it later, and you replay it later. But if you just like, okay, I deal with this one thing and it's done. If you can keep your emotions in check, then it happens faster.
Yeah, I feel like that, and this is specific to me, or if you can speak to it, but I got better at that. I'm not saying but I got much better at that with age. I will say in my 20s and 30s experience. But I
a lot of people get older.
Exactly.
A lot of people get older and don't get experience.
But I mean that thought of being able to manage your emotions and not let it linger and be able to move on to the next. That I didn't. Again, experience, wisdom, experiences. Like I don't want to say it's specific to the job or a job. I think it more is even just life and parenting and everything, is being able to have that, things that you worried about, for me in my 20s or 30s are so not important really, and
right.
And I'd hope that for anyone that they'd be able to figure it out faster than I did. And not that I figured it all out. I don't want to say that, like I can lose my mind with the best of it.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who figured it all out.
But in essence, I think that's important to know. Again, it's managing your emotional, your E is a huge part of your time, of managing, making sure you have enough time.
And one of the tricks that I use, again, I'm not saying this works for everybody, works for you, is one of the tricks I use is if I find myself getting wrapped up into something and get emotional, okay, is this a long-term problem or a short-term problem? And then that helps me figure out the order of magnitude. And sometimes, right, I don't even have a good example right now, but I know that I think of it as a long-term problem, but it's like, wait a second, that's a long-term problem. The juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one. It's not worth doing all that work, fix this long-term problem, and I decide that it's a short-term problem. Yeah. And it's easy for me to sit here and say, but it happens, relationships, job, or whatever. Like if you get a point when you're in a really lousy job, let's say, and you're all worked up about it, and you're and just like, wait, no, I need to stay because I need the income, I need to manage this, I need to find the right opportunity, but I'm going to go. So this is now, it's no longer a 10-year problem or a 20-year problem or a career-long problem. It's a 6-month problem, or maybe even a 12-month problem to go find this. But so I can my emotions are more in check if I can move long-term problems to short-term problems, and if I just recognize them as long-term or short-term.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's long-term and you want it, right, to be a thing that you want to work on, then it becomes a goal. It really becomes something that gets a ton more energy, ton more focus. And again, the other stuff then, right, you deal with this long-term thing, the other stuff becomes less important and takes up less cycles. So you get more time back from it. But so,
maybe this will be my last point on this, but one thing I think is really interesting, and then again, is probably, maybe it's unique to me, but in this part, when you're managing people, assistants, any, anywhere,
players, you're managing the players too.
Is as you've gotten better at kind of these, where I struggle is to articulate that I still care about what you're getting bogged down on and your thoughts, even though I am not emotional about it and I'm kind of moving on. So where I struggle is, and I would say that people, myself included, need to be better, in those situations, is to be able to explain to somebody why that isn't urgent or why that's not important right now, if that makes sense.
It does. And you're right. It's always a tough line. Again, remember one of our episodes, I can't remember which one, we talked about the shortest distance to people's never a straight line. And this is one of those things. It's like, because you really do care, or you wouldn't be talking to that person, right? You really do care.
Yes.
And so you're trying to express your empathy and sympathy for this, maybe not sympathy, but empathy for the situation, trying to coach the person through that situation, coaching a coach or whatever, right? Through that situation. And you care, but it doesn't mean you're all wrapped around the axle.
Yes.
Right. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard line to walk, or whatever the phrase is. But so anyway, I don't know why I got tongue tied on that, but hopefully I made a little bit of sense. But anyway, so I think, the challenge of time, go ahead.
No.
I think the challenge of time really is spend a lot of time figuring, well, I'm going to use your word, and I didn't come into this conversation. The main thing is the main thing, right? The goal is the goal. Go back and really go to the unurgent but important task of figuring out where all these fires are and looking for patterns, figuring out how to identify putting those fires out. Go to unurgent and important and figure out really what your goal is. Figure out what you need to do every day to achieve that goal. What's your priority to start your day, right? You go do those things and then really focus on the important things and kind of let the unimportant things fall away a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes you get it wrong, and something that you thought was unimportant does pop up and all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, you took a shot, right?
Yes.
Time you got a lot more done, all that kind of stuff. And then to add it to your important list.
Yeah.
But I think those are big. And if you haven't read Stephen Covey's book, I would go do that. And then really, I mentioned Tim Ferriss today too. That book to me was not about having a 4-hour work week. When I read it as, oh my gosh, these are all productivity tools.
Yes.
It was a huge, thick book of like tons.
That's a great title. Because
it is.
I mean, it's like already interest to me.
Right.
Me, I was like, 4-day work week. All right, that sounds great to me.
Right. It's a great hook.
Yeah.
Right. But if you read it, it's all productivity tools. Right.
Yes.
And that's the way I read. Like, oh yeah, that would save me time. Oh yeah, I could do that faster. Oh yeah, there's a ton of that stuff. So go read, get exposed to those kinds of things as well. Would be my counsel.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I would love to hear people. What are they doing? What are their tricks? What are their
methods,
tools?
Systems, tools. Right.
that allow them to be better at their time and their decision making.
Right.
So,
and there's tons of them out there. So
Yes.
some people, I'm sure, are more advanced than we are at figuring out how time management and that kind of stuff. But there's also tons of people that don't follow the rules.
yes.
They even know
Yes.
they don't have the discipline to do it, or they don't even know the concept of working at it. So we've talked today about tools that we use, our perspectives, but there's a ton out there. Just be disciplined enough to go learn about it.
Yeah, no doubt. No, good stuff. I enjoyed that. So, all right.
Thanks for your time, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for your time, man.
All right.
All right, see you. Thanks for joining us for today's show. We want to hear from you with your questions and comments. You can find us at thenickanthonyshow.com and our social media handles, which you can find in our description.